Imagine you have unlimited wealth. Like you have access to the absolute most elite, hyper-exclusive medical clinics hidden away in the Swiss Alps.
Oh, the ones everyone always hears rumors about.
Exactly. You're spending millions to completely refresh your blood every single month. You're getting cutting-edge stem cell injections, and you are literally buying exosomes derived from the blood of the young.
Just doing everything humanly possible to buy more time.
Right. But according to the cosmic framework we're diving into today, if you don't have a fundamental purpose, you still might die tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a beggar on the street who hasn't seen a doctor in decades might easily live to be 100, simply because the universe needs them to finish a job.
I mean, it is a massive paradigm shift. It completely upends how we usually think about health, wealth, and, the basic math of human survival.
It really does.
We are so used to thinking of longevity as this biological puzzle that we can just buy our way out of. But this material frames it entirely around spiritual utility.
Which is exactly why we're looking at this today. For you listening, if you scroll through social media or read any tech blog lately, it feels like we are living in the golden age of biological obsession.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
Right. The pursuit of engineered youth is trending everywhere, from Silicon Valley billionaires to European and Chinese celebrities. So the question we're asking is, are these elite treatments just the next logical step in natural human evolution?
Or are we crossing a line into an unnatural, almost engineered greed?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our source material today tackles that exact question, but it does so using a set of notes from a truly mind-bending lecture given in Gyeongju, South Korea, back in March of 2026.
And it's probably worth noting right up front, this is not a clinical medical paper.
No, definitely not.
It is a profound, universe-spanning spiritual lecture. But before we get lost in the stars, the source actually grounds the entire philosophy in a very charming, kind of frail human detail.
Oh, I love this part.
Right. The speaker who is delivering this massive cosmological framework actually has to start by apologizing to the audience because their voice is completely hoarse.
Yes, they literally have a terrible winter cold. I mean, they're about to explain the flawless mechanics of the universe, and they are standing at the podium struggling to clear their throat.
Exactly. The notes mention the speaker had just finished Dongangyo.
Which is a winter retreat, right?
Yeah, it's a grueling traditional winter retreat for spiritual practitioners in Korea. It's this period of intense ascetic isolation.
Wow.
So you have the spiritual master who has just spent months cultivating their mind, but they're still trapped in an animal body that gets a scratchy throat when the weather changes.
It's so relatable.
It perfectly sets the stage for the core conflict we're going to explore, which is that friction between the eternal spirit and the decaying biological body.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand if we should use all this modern biotech to live forever, we first have to look at how this philosophy defines the actual parameters of a human lifespan.
Right, the baseline facts.
Yeah. And according to the lecture, human life is inherently designed to be around 100 years. If you're on the early side, maybe 80 years. And if you live correctly, the absolute maximum biological limit is around 120 years.
What's fascinating here is the timing the speaker highlights. The source explicitly points to the year 2026, the very year of this lecture, as a critical turning point for the global bioindustry.
They saw it coming.
They did. The speaker is fully aware that these experimental, life-extending treatments are exploding in popularity. They aren't denying the science at all.
But they issue a warning, right?
Yes, a very strict warning against extending life purely out of a greedy desire just to accumulate more calendar years.
Right, because just adding years to a biological clock isn't the point of being alive. Makes me think of an analogy. Imagine someone who owns a classic vintage sports car.
Okay.
It's gorgeous, but the engine is permanently dead. It cannot drive. It can never fulfill its fundamental purpose of being out on the open road.
So it's just a showpiece.
Exactly. But the owner is obsessively buffing the exterior, paying for custom paint jobs, replacing the leather seats just to keep it sitting perfectly in a climate-controlled garage so they can tell their friends, look, I have this car.
Yeah, that's completely pointless.
Right. The vehicle isn't doing what it was built to do.
That's a perfect parallel. And the speaker takes that concept a step further into a pretty dark reality. There's a striking moment in the notes where the speaker argues that living to 120 without your health or without the ability to actively do your life's work is not a blessing.
It's the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, they literally call it a punishment.
A punishment from nature itself. That is a heavy way to look at aging.
It is heavy, but look at the logic. The framework argues that artificially dragging out a completely depleted life forces you into a state of deep indignity.
Because you're helpless.
Exactly. You are forced to show your ugliest, most helpless decline to your family, to your neighbors, and to society. It becomes a burden on everyone around you.
So true life requires joy.
Yes. The philosophy insists that life is only a true life if it is lived joyfully, while you're actively fulfilling whatever purpose you are here to fulfill.
If you're just lying in a bed, clinging to existence without being able to contribute anything, you aren't really living.
Right, you are being disciplined.
Man. So if clinging to life just for the sake of breathing is essentially a punishment, and our goal shouldn't just be to live as long as medically possible, then who or what is deciding when our time is actually up?
That is the big question.
Because if nature is pulling the strings, how does it decide when to cut them? This brings us to a part of the source material that I found deeply provocative and honestly a little confronting.
Oh, the three chances.
Yeah, it's the speaker's theory on life's three chances and how deaths are orchestrated. And I have to admit, I want to push back on this a little because it challenges a lot of our basic human empathy.
How so? What part of it felt confronting to you?
Well, the source claims that deaths are never just random accidents. It says that the universe operates with what it calls 0.1 millimeter precision.
Right, nothing is by chance.
Every car crash, every sudden illness, every unexpected passing, it's all meticulously calculated. But if we are meant to live joyful, purposeful lives up to 100 years old, how does this framework possibly justify tragic early deaths?
I see what you mean.
Because looking at the news, it certainly feels like chaotic, senseless chance a lot of the time.
It absolutely feels that way from our limited human perspective. But the speaker breaks down the human lifespan into three distinct phases where a person might face death and assigns a very specific, cold cosmic logic to each.
Okay, what's the first phase?
The first phase is childhood. If a life ends in childhood, the source views this as a profound sacrifice. The child's passing isn't random. It is meant to leave a necessary deep sorrow or a specific life lesson that the parents, the family, or even the broader society desperately needed to experience in order to correct their path.
I see. So it's not just bad luck, it's a sacrificial catalyst for the people who are left behind.
Exactly.
The child essentially playing a role for the spiritual growth of the adults.
Correct. But the second phase youth, specifically defined here as someone in their 30s, is where the source makes its most shocking claim about how this 0.1 millimeter precision works.
Yes, this part stopped me in my tracks.
According to the lecture, if a family is living incorrectly, if they are fundamentally off their proper path, harboring bad energy, or acting selfishly, nature will intervene to wake them up.
And it does this in a really brutal way.
Yeah. To do that, it doesn't take the troublemaker of the family. It takes the absolute best, most successful, most beloved, brightest 30-something star of that family.
And I see the cold logic in that, but it still feels incredibly ruthless.
Right.
How does the source reconcile that level of cruelty with a universe that is supposedly trying to help us evolve?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Totally. You would intuitively think if a family needs to be punished or corrected, nature would take the person causing all the problems.
But step back and look at the psychological mechanics of what the speaker is arguing. If nature took the worst, most troublesome family member, the one causing accidents, draining the family finances, creating chaos, what would the surviving family members actually feel?
Honestly, they'd probably grieve for a moment, but deep down they would feel a massive secret sense of relief.
Exactly. They would think, the problem child is finally gone. We can relax now.
Right.
They wouldn't change their fundamental ways. They wouldn't reflect on their own behavior. So to deliver the massive, earth-shattering shock required to actually force a stubborn family to wake up and completely reevaluate their entire existence, nature has to take the person they value the absolute most.
Because taking the brightest star creates an unignorable void.
Precisely. The 0.1 millimeter precision isn't about cruelty. It's about maximizing the emotional and spiritual impact on the survivors so they change course.
For you listening right now, just think about how intensely that perspective reframes the concept of tragedy. When you see a news story about a bright, promising young person tragically passing away in a totally random accident, our default societal reaction is, what a senseless, chaotic loss.
It's just human nature to feel that way.
But this philosophy shifts that view entirely. It moves us from a universe of chaotic chance into a meticulously orchestrated cosmos where every event is a deliberate, targeted signal.
It really does.
And then, I assume, the third chance for death is old age.
Right. The third phase is simply the natural wrap-up of a completed life. If you've navigated the lessons of childhood and survived the developmental tests of youth, you live out your days, do your work, and face the final transition naturally when your physical vehicle simply runs out of mileage.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because if human lives and deaths are being managed with this intense, targeted precision, what is it actually trying to achieve?
What's the end game?
Right. What is the ultimate goal of this grand cosmic orchestration? The source doesn't just leave it at, try to be a good person. It introduces a cosmology that is absolutely massive in scale. It claims that humans are not just smart, evolved apes. We are actually animal bodies fused with a god.
This is the very core of the speaker's philosophy. We are eternal spiritual entities, literal gods, temporarily inhabiting these biological, decaying animal vehicles.
Which sounds like sci-fi, but it has a specific purpose.
Yeah, and the reason we do this bizarre fusion comes down to a crucial concept called Neigong.
Which translates roughly to inner power or inner mass.
Uh-huh.
But we need to slow down here and really unpack how this works. I like to think of it like spiritual calluses.
That's a great way to put it. The lecture draws a fascinating parallel between the physical universe and the spiritual one.
Okay, how so?
Well, in the physical universe, matter has gravity. The heavier and denser a physical object is, the more gravitational pull it has. But in the spiritual realm, spirits don't have physical atoms. They don't have physical mass. So how do they gain density?
They need Neigongs.
Exactly. And you absolutely cannot build Neigong just by floating around as a formless spirit in a realm of pure energy.
Because there's no friction.
Mm.
As a pure spirit, you don't feel pain, you don't get hungry, you don't get your heart broken. You need resistance. You need weight training for the soul.
Precisely. Gods in their pure form cannot feel physical joy, they cannot feel pain, and they cannot distinguish right from wrong because they have no stakes in a physical reality.
So we come here to suffer.
In a way, yes. We literally cram our infinite spiritual selves into these frail, limited animal bodies. We gather knowledge, we face incredible hardships, we make terrible mistakes. We suffer specifically to create the friction needed to build this inner mass.
And the ultimate goal is that once enough Neigong is built up over multiple lifetimes, we achieve what the speaker calls Heital.
Heital, which means liberation.
Right. Liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. You finally shed the animal body for good. You take all that dense spiritual mass you've accumulated, and you return to your true, original form as a god, but now a god with profound density and understanding.
It's a beautiful concept.
But I want to make sure you, the listener, catch a really crucial detail the speaker throws in here, because it changes the whole timeline of human history. According to this source, no one in the entirety of human existence has ever actually achieved this final liberation yet.
Not a single person. From ancient philosophers to modern saints, the speaker claims everyone has just been cycling through, building up mass, but no one has crossed the finish line.
Which is wild to think about. But the speaker says that is all changing right now. They claim we are currently at the very beginning of a brand new cosmic era.
The post-heaven era.
Yes, Etienne. This is the era where, for the first time ever, the spiritual atmosphere has changed, and ultimate liberation is actually on the table.
And part of this new era is characterized by a concept called Hangik Ingun. It's a traditional Korean philosophy that translates to broadly benefiting humanity.
So it's not just about self-improvement anymore.
No, not at all. The speaker implies that to achieve this final liberation, your purpose can no longer just be about your own survival or your own family. Your actions must actively benefit the wider world.
Okay.
And this brings us to the specific cosmic mathematics the source outlines for who gets to achieve this. The cosmos is currently operating on a very strict 4.3.3 ratio.
Let's break those numbers down because they are very specific, and I want to know how the universe is sorting us.
So the first group makes up 40% of humanity. The speaker refers to them as the general public. These souls are laying their foundational spiritual groundwork, but they still have a significant amount of learning and empathy to develop.
So they aren't done yet.
Not even close. Therefore, they will need to reincarnate 2 more times. They have 2 more human lifetimes to gather enough Neigong.
Okay, so that's the 40% bucket. 2 more rounds of spiritual weight training. What about the next group?
Then you have the middle 30%. These souls are further along in their development. They are actively refining their purpose. They will need to reincarnate just 1 final time after this current life to polish their inner mass.
Okay, let me do the math. If 40% need 2 lifetimes and 30% need 1, let me guess. The final 30% are on their absolute last lap. right now.
Exactly. The final 30% are currently living their absolute final lifetime on Earth. For them, the stakes are incredibly high. There is no coming back to try again.
This is the final exam.
It is. If they complete their specific work, live for the broad benefit of humanity, and build their final Naigong, they achieve Heital and return to their God state forever.
So what does this all mean for us right here, right now? Armed with this massive multi-lifetime cosmic perspective, I want to bring the conversation all the way back to your original earthly concern from the very beginning of our deep dive.
The anti-aging tech.
Yes, you're reading the news, you see tech billionaires spending tens of millions on stem cells, exosomes, and blood purification to live to 120,
Right.
while the average person is just trying to afford basic groceries and standard health care.
Yeah.
Is it unfair? How should we deal with the intense societal inequality of these anti-aging treatments?
If we connect this to the bigger picture the source paints, the speaker's ultimate conclusion is actually deeply empowering, though it demands a terrifying amount of personal accountability.
Undoubtedly.
According to this framework, wealth is not a measure of your worth, and it is certainly not a reward for being a good person. Wealth is simply a cosmic tool allocated for your specific work in this lifetime.
Just a tool, like a hammer or a wrench, but for your cosmic purpose.
Exactly. If a wealthy person has a massive amount of important society-shifting work left to accomplish work that falls under that Hongik Ingen ideal of benefiting humanity, the universe might grant them access to that life-extending tech so they have the physical time to finish their job.
Makes sense.
But, and this is the crucial part that levels the playing field, the speaker explicitly states that even a beggar on the street, if they find their true purpose and strive to live their life beautifully and correctly, nature will step in.
Wow.
That beggar will be miraculously granted the health, the resources, and the longevity they need to complete their mission.
So the stem cells, the hyper-expensive clinics, the fancy blood treatments, they are almost irrelevant in the grand scheme.
Completely irrelevant.
If you need the time to do your work, the universe, with its 0.1 millimeter precision, will ensure you get the time, regardless of your bank account.
Yes. The underlying mechanism isn't money, it's purpose. If you have no real work to do, if you're just that vintage sports car sitting idle in the garage showing off your custom paint job, all the billions in the world won't force the universe to keep your engine running indefinitely. Nature will pull the plug when your utility is zero.
And that leads to a very stern warning from the speaker, one that I think is so incredibly relevant for you to hear in our modern, hyper-connected, comparison-obsessed culture.
The part about envy.
Yeah. The source says that envy and resentment are completely useless. Looking at the billionaires on social media and complaining about what they have is a trap. You are here to live your human life. You are not here to meddle in or be jealous of someone else's cosmic curriculum.
The lecture states quite bluntly that complaining about others and feeling envious only ensures that your own life remains entirely stagnant.
Because you're distracted.
Exactly. You are essentially refusing to build your own Naigong because you're too busy staring at someone else's weight rack at the gym.
Staring at someone else's weight rack. That is exactly what we do when we doom scroll. It really is about keeping your eyes on your own paper.
It is, because ultimately the source reminds us of the true, profound privilege of the human experience. As gods, in our pure spiritual form, we cannot feel the warmth of the sun, we cannot feel the joy of a good meal, and we cannot feel the sting of a scraped knee or a broken heart.
It's all just blank energy.
Right. Only humans, trapped in a physical body, have the capacity to experience the friction of reality and learn from it. The suffering, the brief moments of elation, the confusion, the physical aging, that friction is the exclusive privilege of being alive. It is the only way we grow.
What an incredible journey this deep dive has been. I mean, we started by looking at modern celebrities getting stem cell injections in high-end European clinics, and we ended up uncovering a philosophy where human bodies are essentially temporary, high-stakes classrooms for gods desperately trying to build enough inner mass to finally go home.
It completely reframes the modern quest for youth. It changes the fundamental question from how long can I possibly live to why am I living at all?
Exactly. And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with, something to mull over as you step away from this and go about the rest of your day.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, we talked earlier about the speaker's hoarse voice. Even a spiritual master outlining the flawless 0.1 millimeter precision of the cosmos is still bound by the annoying, frail reality of an animal body with a winter cold.
Right, that beautiful friction.
Exactly. It highlights the friction of the human experience. So I challenge you, based on the source's criteria, if wealth and health are only granted to those who have work, to do what is the work you're doing today that makes your physical vehicle worth maintaining?
That's a powerful question.
Something to think about as you scroll through the headlines today. Until next time.